Hello, my name is Dr Ursula Hackett and I'm an academic based at Royal Holloway, University of London. I've created these videos for ambitious students who want to write brilliantly, not just okay. This video is about how to discard the training wheels and liberate your essay writing. There are things you get told to do at school or when you're just starting out at university. Strict rules about precisely how an essay has to go. For example, never ever use the word I in your essays, or you must write 5 paragraphs of which the second is the pros, the third is the cons, and the fourth the debate. These are training wheels, or sidebars in bowling alleys, which can prevent you from really screwing up. But they come at a cost, and that is preventing you from reaching for the highest grades that demand original thinking, critical analysis, and beautiful writing. Why might these training wheels stop you from writing, thinking, and analysing at the highest levels? Well, because they make essays formulaic and often boring to write and read. They impede your ability to think creatively and critically about a question by forcing you to follow a preordained structure. They are a straitjacket. You might get a lowish, solid but not stellar mark for such an essay, and you're unlikely to crash and burn, but it's not going to be much fun to write. There are 3 rules I think you should jettison immediately. The first is the pro-con rule, and that's where you put a line down the middle of the page and you put all the pros on one side and all the cons on the other. A variant of that is to think of an essay in terms of 5 paragraphs, the first being the introduction, the second the pros, the third the cons, the fourth the debate, and the fifth the conclusion. The pro-con rule helps you to think about both sides of an argument. It gives you some structure, but it can sound like a seesaw. On the one hand this, on the other hand that. My old tutor as an undergraduate told me to eliminate the word however from my essays. Sometimes each paragraph seems completely divorced from the others, so the writer doesn't actually engage with the arguments presented, except at the end. Worse, it's not always obvious what the writer's actual view is. A brilliant essay makes a case by sustaining an argument over the whole essay. That doesn't mean you ignore the counter-arguments. On the contrary, you engage with them. Imagine you were arguing with your friend Sheena in the SU about who was the most effective president of the Argentinian Tango Society. You think Anna was most effective, but Sheena thinks Ben was the most effective. You want to convince Sheena that Anna, not Ben, was the most effective president. How do you do this? Not just by listing Anna's excellent qualities, and not just by putting a line down the page with Anna's case on one side and Ben's on the other. If you do this, Sheena might be confused about what your argument is. Are you on her side after all? How do you weigh the arguments? Instead, you establish what your metric of success is. Perhaps that's where you differ. Anna has more dance awards than Ben. Sure, Ben organised more social events, but being president of the Tango Society is mostly about being an excellent dancer. You assess which of Sheena's counter-arguments is the most powerful. For example, Sheena thinks that Anna was efficient. She made the most of limited resources, but not most effective. She didn't put on many big competitions. And you should respond to those counter-arguments explicitly. Show why your arguments trump hers. For example, I can see why you care about competitions, Sheena, but you're not taking into account context. Take into account the level of resources available. Anna put on a comparable number of big competitions to previous presidents of the Tango Society, and she won more dance awards to boot. The second rule you should jettison immediately is the I rule, and that is that you should never use the word I in an essay. It stops you from using horrible constructions like "in my opinion" or "I believe that." These are excessive hedges, which I talk about in my video on elegant writing. They bespeak a lack of confidence in whatever you're asserting. You don't turn to your mate over lunch and say, "I believe that there is a fork in front of me," when it's right in front of you. But eliminating all uses of I is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It can force you into nasty passive constructions like, On the basis of the analysis which was made of the data which were collected, it is suggested that the null hypothesis can be rejected. Such statements would be much more easily expressed as I argue or I did X. You need to own up. I collected the data. I reject the null hypothesis. It's me, me, me. Eliminating I is a training wheel that ought to be replaced by a good read-through by you or a mate. Sometimes I is useful, sometimes it's not. The key is to write confidently by taking responsibility for your argument. And that means eliminating both weak-kneed hedges like I believe that and passive constructions like on the basis of the evidence presented, it is suggested that. The third rule you should jettison immediately is the definition rule. That's the rule that there is a single agreed upon definition that you have to get right, then you ignore it and move on to the next thing. In politics A-level, you've got 5 marks for a correct definition. But university essays often ask you to consider essentially contested concepts. Power, politics, feminism, freedom, exceptionalism, conservatism, democracy. And you need to acknowledge that there may be several different dimensions to these concepts and different metrics to measure them. One way to write a brilliant essay is to tear these meaty concepts into their component dimensions and consider the question in relation to each of them. You make a decision about which definition you find most persuasive. You make a decision about the implications of each definition. For instance, take the question, arguments that America is exceptional can be neither proved nor disproved. Discuss. Some definitions of exceptionalism are not the sort of propositions that can be proved or disproved. For example, America is the greatest. Yay, America! It's an expression of a feeling or emotional response, not a truth claim necessarily. But other definitions of exceptionalism do make truth claims. For example, the United States has a tendency to act unilaterally in foreign engagements. Is that true or false? There are religious claims to exceptionalism, political institutional claims, economic claims, values claims, and many others. The point is, don't simply define and move on. Think about the different definitions that might be proposed and explicitly consider what the implications of each might be. So, to recap, loosen up and get rid of those training wheels. Stop thinking rigidly about pros and cons and start thinking about how you can best persuade your reader. Think carefully about your definitions, plural, and consider their various dimensions. And don't stick rigidly to the no I rule at the expense of bad writing. Thanks for watching this video. If you found it useful, please like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, where you can find other videos to help you write truly brilliant essays.